Okay, welcome. Today I wanted to offer a little reflection about attachment theory, ACEs, and boarding school, and in particular, just relating it into an interview that I'm doing tomorrow with a lady called Suzanne Zeedyk. So, yeah, enjoy. Okay, so tomorrow morning, I'm putting this up tomorrow, so on Wednesday. So as this is going live, I will actually be recording this. But tomorrow I am going to be doing a podcast with a lady called Suzanne Zeedyk, and she is a developmental psychologist from the university. I think she did her PhD in Yale and spent most of her clinical life in Scotland. And her speciality has been around ACEs. So ACEs are adverse childhood experiences. So I think it was maybe 10 years ago. The ACEs, no, I think 1998, so 20 years ago, that this idea of ACEs came about. And the ACEs was all to do with the to basically ask 10 questions. So if you've watched the film Wisdom of Trauma, in it, there's a scene where there's some prisoners and they're all stood in a circle and they get asked these questions. Did you ever have this happen? Step forward. And the questions they're being asked, my understanding of this is the ACEs questions. I don't have them off the top of my head, but I did the test a couple of days ago again. And what it is, it's like, were you sexually abused? Did your parents kind of hit you? Did you ever feel unsafe, etc., etc.? Was one of your parents an alcoholic? And I went through and did this myself, and I got 7 questions out of 10. And as I was reflecting on it, I realized that probably between 3 and 4 were from boarding school. And it's like, oh, that's interesting. So one of them is, did you struggle with starvation, as in you didn't have enough food? And yeah, for school, we didn't have enough food. So it was really interesting to see that and that relationship. So tomorrow I'm going to talk to this lady. She contacted me when we were at a conference a couple of weeks ago, a boarding school conference, and she said she'd seen some of my podcasts, and I was like, oh, I'd love to speak to you. So some of the things she's just going to talk about is the fact that they've got this trauma movement in Scotland, the adverse childhood experiences, but she says there's been no link to boarding school, and it's clearly this developmental trauma, this separation. And yet in all the work she's done with ACEs, she did a conference with Gabor Mate a couple of years ago. There's been no mention of boarding school. And she says, this is a huge omission. So we're going to talk about that tomorrow. It will go live on Friday. And I think it's really exciting that these conversations are starting to happen. For me, I thought trauma, the study of trauma had been around for ages, but it sounds like in the general public, from what her research is showing, in the UK, it's only really been since 2015. That's incredible. I always thought that this had been around for ages. So I just thought that was really, really fascinating. So Suzanne's speciality is working with young children and seeing the importance of that attachment. And she's kind of studied that a lot. And really, what happens when we go to boarding school is that separation. We have that detachment. So some of the things we're going to talk about is, how trauma works, with the rise of the trauma movement, and her reflections about thinking that boarding school trauma has been left out of the trauma movement. Why has there been that separation, exclusion? and some of the other consequences of, she calls it legitimizing suffering of boarding school syndrome. So yeah, I think it's really going to be a fascinating stance, and she's going to then share at the end what her stance is with all of this. So yeah, I'm excited, and I've got some more amazing podcasts lined up. Next week, I'm talking to a man who runs a charity where they go off to Africa, dealing with trauma, with people involved in wars in Rwanda, the Congo, and they use EFT, which is one of the main tools that I use. So I was fascinated to speak to him. So I'm speaking to him next week. The week after, potentially speaking to an author of a book called Young Offenders, who was in basically a bank robber, and then he's moved into the work of helping people to transform. So yeah, I've got some exciting podcasts. So yeah, if you have any questions, reflections, and like I say, I will be probably putting this up on Friday. It depends if I have to edit it, but the intention would be to put it up on that Friday. So many blessings, and yeah, hope you enjoy. Bye-bye.